Hello, everybody. It's the seventh academic year of the Frank and Stan chat, and this is episode or edition 231. And I have to say, it's absolutely brilliant to have a guest with us today who made such a big impact on our first Spotlight edition was with Dennis Sherwood, and it was all about how exams, GCSEs, A levels, AS, all that sort of stuff, how they're actually marked, how they're sort of quality assured, and how people can contest those judgments or decisions that are made. So it's fantastic to have you back today, Dennis. Thank you. How are you?
I am well, and many thanks for inviting me on, particularly for such a special show at the start of the academic year. It's an honour. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And Stan, hello, how are you?
I'm okay. Been a strange break. Following Frank knows that my mother died at the end of July, and we had the funeral and everything to arrange through August. So it's not really felt like the normal summer. We're still dealing with things like probate and banks, and I mean, it's not funny, but the bank wrote to my father actually to tell me how sorry they were that my mother had died. My father died in 2015. Uh, so then I had to tell them, no, you've got this wrong. My father's already passed on. And they then wrote to say how sorry they were that my father recently passed.
Oh dear me. It's one of those, isn't it, where you try to do the right thing and then you make it even worse, by trying to do the right thing.
Well, I also had to pay off an outstanding mortgage that was taken out, and it took me nearly 2 hours of talking to people to find out how I could do that. Till
Right.
eventually, some really kind gentleman at the bank rang me up and said, "How can I help you?" And I said, "I'm trying to pay you £30,000, but you're making it very difficult."
Uh, well, it's great to have you back, Stan. And sorry, what you've had to go through since our last chat. But yeah, something that started in May 2020, sorry, when we couldn't meet because of the COVID restrictions, and Stan and I used to meet for a beer probably every month or so in Manchester. We decided to do these chats, and here we are at edition 231 in our seventh academic year. It seems amazing that all of this is still rolling. But can I just make one thing before we get into the chat? I was just watching Mary Spender, who is a musician of some note. She's a British guitarist, singer-songwriter, and she has a YouTube channel. And she did a piece today about how AI is affecting the music industry. She was saying, really, do you need to have, do you need to be able to play an instrument? No. Do you need to have a voice? No. Can you actually get AI to write something, on a theme with a certain, no. But she said one of the things that, she said, I wonder whether it's worth carrying on with the channel. And she has, millions of people follow her. And but she came back and said, well, no, it's the authenticity of it. It's the realness of it. It's the fact that people know that it's me that's doing it, that it's not AI. That's the key point. And it made me think about our chat, Stan, that, we don't script it. We don't sort of play to anybody, in effect, that we're not sort of supported by anybody. And it is that authenticity that actually keeps us going. And I think that's the reason why people still want to listen or watch us on this humble little channel. And the fact also that we're not seeking to get thousands of people or even millions of people to listen or watch. It's just from 2020, it was just a chat, and that's all it is. So I just thought it was worth saying that we'll carry on.
Worth saying as well, there's been no income generated from it either. We've no adverts. There's no.
No,
It's
no.
not.
The only thing we give away is one of these to our guests. So and that's paid for by us. So yeah. So there's no support at all. Right. Okay. Stan, what's caught your eye?
Well, as
Oh, sorry, no. Let me go to Dennis first.
Dennis first, so you
Dennis first.
stop me.
There.
Well,
Dennis, who are
well,
you? Why are you here?
yeah. Well, thank you very much, guys. What has caught my eye, actually, it is what hasn't caught my eye. It's a bit like, the Sherlock Holmes dog that didn't bark, something that should have been in the press over the last few weeks, but hasn't been there. Of course, the big news of the last several weeks is the A-level, AS, and GCSE results. Um, in fact, rather non-newsworthy this year. Not a lot actually happened. But what wasn't
But
reported,
Dennis, isn't that in the system?
well, yeah,
The system is designed to make sure that there is virtually no variation from one year to the next.
absolutely right. And they achieved that. They achieved that. But what wasn't in the news, to me, is the most important thing, is that in essence, and here's the statistics, Stan and Frank, please challenge. On average, every student in the country had at least one wrong grade. Every student, all 1.3 million of them. And that's because there were 6 million grades, 6.6 in fact, of which about a quarter were wrong, which is about 1.5. So if you average that out, that's not reported. And then the appeals process, which people are engaged in right now, will never discover those. So those kids can never discover they've got the wrong grade. That was not in the news.
Can you just explain? I mean, I don't want to
I
reproduce,
think we should, Frank.
but I think
it's important.
to me, this is the bit that I think probably needs people find quite difficult because a lot of schools now and parents with pressured schools, some of them are paying up to £60 for what they believe to be a remark. But actually, it's not quite as straightforward as that, is it? So, would you just explain to those who don't know what actually is, the appeal system and how is it set up not to be able to, to basically unravel all of this mess?
Yeah. Since 2016, the appeals process has been about a challenge. Appeal is something else. The official word is challenge. And if you challenge a grade, you get what is called a review of marking. And a review of marking checks for marking errors, which all sounds exactly what you want. Those words are designed to do that. But checking for a marking error is to check the way an answer was marked with compliance against the mark scheme. If a marking error is discovered, then that question, the script is remarked. But if there is no marking error, the original mark and grade is confirmed, which once again sounds exactly right. But there's a catch, and there's a catch that a rather counterintuitive feature of our exam system is you can get the wrong grade even if you've got the right mark. Now that's bizarre. How on earth can you get the wrong grade if you've got the right mark? It makes no sense at all until a particular penny drops. And that penny is the fact that if you, Frank, were to mark one of my answers, you might give me 12 out of 20. But Stan, you may have liked a particular feature of what I did. You may have given me 13 out of 20. We all know that different experts have slightly different opinions, and that's built in to the marking process in a concept called tolerance, which is the quality control measure of when the exam board intervened. But if, Frank, you gave me 12 and Stan, you gave me 13, when we add up all the marks for the exam, maybe it ends up as, say, 62 or 64. Now, if the grade boundary is 63, one of them is one grade, say a C, and the other one is a B. Which one I get on my certificate is a lottery of whether you, Frank, or you, Stan, did the marking. But you can't both be right. But the marking is right, the grade is wrong. Now, OFQUAL unwind that with the concept of what they call the definitive grade, the mark by a senior examiner, which we accept as authoritative. Now, if that happened to be 66 or whatever, the higher grade, if I actually got the lower grade and do a review of marking, that cannot be discovered.
Mm.
The lower grade, the wrong grade, the non-definitive grade will be confirmed. That's built in. Now, if that was rare, it would be, it wouldn't be a problem. But in 2014-15, Ofqual measured it. It happens for about 1 in 4 scripts on average. So the instance of that kind of event is colossal, 25% of the grades. That's why I say 1 grade in 4 is wrong.
Now, those, and obviously the subjects, like humanities subjects, those where there's a script you need to do some interpretation, are more likely to be wrong than those where they're, say, a mathematical one, where there's still errors, but then the chances of that are not as high. And I think the issue for me is a number of head teachers and CEOs have gone on to social media in the last week or so to say, well, how can a paper be 10 marks out? You know, there was this shock, really, that in a way the system believes it to be much more reliable and robust than it really is. You know, and it started, I felt, perhaps I was just listening to it, a bit like when you buy a new car and suddenly you notice that car on the road. But actually what happened on this one is that people were suddenly, I was picking up on the fact that quite a few people were concerned about the lack of accuracy and the impact this was having on the children or young people, because they were not able to go, say, to the university of their first choice, or were being pushed into clearing in order to, you know, because the error sits with the examination board. So it does feel as though there is a shift in sort of confidence about the whole system. And I, you know, it's just, you know, in a way, we interviewed 4 students, Dennis, this summer, who were affected by the grade profile error. You know, so in effect, they didn't achieve the A levels that they wanted. And for 2 of those students, it was quite devastating because they had set themselves up to go to universities, one of which was quite local to where they were, which meant they could stay at home. And they couldn't go to that university because of the error. So the financial impact on them and their families was quite significant. Two of the students said, well, actually, it ended up as being quite good. I think I probably liked my second choice, or the one I got through clearing. But all of them were clear that, you know, that they just assumed that the system was highly accurate and that it was beyond reproach, really.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is based on trust. In fact, Ofqual published their most recent strategy in May of this year, which is important. It's the first one with Sir Ian Balcombe as chief regulator and the first one in a Labour government. So it's important. Words like trust and fairness each appear about 20 times in as many pages. So the whole thing is based on trust. When you get told on that day in August, GCSE grade 3, what can you do? You have to accept it on trust. And if you're a bit concerned, you get a review of marking, but even that doesn't work. And you talk of victims. To me, the greatest victims are the 37,000, I'm not making that number up, 37,000 people who on August the 21st this year were told grade 3 GCSE English language, you're a failure. Though, in fact, there are about 180,000 of them, 37,000 of them truly merited grade 4 pass. So they've been consigned to resit, failure, all of that stuff, not because they don't know their fronted adverbials, but because Ofqual can't deliver reliable grades. 37,000 people condemned who don't know they're condemned and who can never find out. It's terrible.
So, I mean, one thing I should have done is introduced you, though, Dennis, and say, well, people be asking, well, how does this guy know all this stuff? You know, so can you just give us a little bit before we move on to Stan? You know, how did you get so heavily involved in all of this sort of data and challenge and whatever?
Yeah. Originally, like 2013, that's a dozen years ago now. Actually, I'm a consultant by profession, and I was actually commissioned by Ofqual to do a study in 2013 looking at their systems. So I became very interested in how do these systems work? You know, how is marking actually done? How is grading done? Grading, of course, happens after the marking. How are the grade boundaries set? And I understood what was going on. And that was fine. I did my assignment for Ofqual. And then in 2016, I saw their consultation document that, in fact, they'd issued on the 10th of December 2015, seeking changes in the appeals rules, the introduction of the marking error test. And I was truly puzzled as to why would a regulator who ostensibly is there to protect the consumer, the student, why are they making it harder to appeal? So that triggered my or re-triggered my interest, and I've been studying it ever since, keeping track of all of the publications from OFQUAL and trying to identify some of these problems because OFQUAL don't advertise all of this stuff.
No, so it's in your book, Missing the Mark, which I,
Yeah.
thoroughly encourage. Anybody who's interested
Thank
at all in this should be reading it. But anyway, thank you, Dennis. What a stimulating.
On that, there's something that I probably knew all along, but it never really hit me until we had our first chat with Dennis, and that was the grade boundaries, etc., are made so effectively a third of young people cannot get the grade they need. They simply cannot get it. And the talk about, which we'll come on to, young people being absent from school and therefore less likely, we want to do everything we can to get them to get the grade. Well, if you make 10 people get the grade that were going to be absent, then 10 kids who were attending every day don't get the grade.
Yeah.
So there's no, until we go on something completely different by the way we do exams, and by that I would say criterion referenced testing, we've got a third of kids who cannot get the grades they want, and that's deliberate and that's set up. And I think, if I'm right, it's based on Key Stage 2 outcomes.
Yeah.
Not the individual child, but the country's. So it's a fixed race, and you can't improve that figure by anything working with any number of children. All you can do is put more into one bracket, but as you do, you push more people out, more young people out.
I do remember the former minister, and I'm, because this does go out, so others, not just a chat, it's a recorded chat. So I'm being very careful now because it's just come back into my mind, where I think Nick Gibb said that it is possible for every single child to get a grade 4. Now, it is possible, but the system won't probably allow it because there will be a big hoo-ha about a reduction in the standard for grade 4. So people would then question as to whether it was too easy, that year because everybody got a grade 4. So it is possible, but the system, I don't think OFQUAL would allow it within current sort of
what
system.
you're saying, Frank, is it's possible for every student to achieve a performance that's of that standard, but it's not possible for them all to get a GCSE 4.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. So yeah, I mean, it's just, and I think the talking to the students, and I think this is what's driven Dennis's work and desire to get this resolved, as he said, is because it affects students. But talking to those 4 students, that they felt shortchanged when we explained to them the system. They themselves were completely unaware. And when I look at some research that came out a couple of days ago, which said what are the 2 issues that are most concerning secondary school students? Why is it affecting their sort of desire to go to school? Exams were right at the top of it. And I can't imagine you will speak to any secondary head teacher, even the most sort of rounded individual who really is concerned about all of this, cannot ignore the fact that the whole accountability system is very much driven by those exam results. And so there is this sort of like pressure that's always there on senior staff. It's always there on the students. And, going through this at the moment, just taking a year 9 to school this morning, you can feel the pressure on the first day of school. It doesn't feel right. And it explains why we have some of the lowest, well-being figures in Europe. This is one of the reasons for it. Anyway, Stan, what's caught your eye this week?
Well, without wanting to sound boring, it's probably wrong to say it's about statistics. It's about social media and making use of social media to misinform, and I suspect deliberately. There's a tweet from the behaviour czar, the new behaviour czar, which is the same as the old behaviour czar, saying that behaviour crisis, and the next bit is in inverted commas because I think it's from a Times article, means every pupil loses 45 days of learning per year. Now, I know it could be argued that's just a quote, but it's a quote taken out to deliberately make it look like every single pupil loses 45 days. That's just 9 weeks of education lost by every single child because of disruption. So when you look at it a bit further, it's a survey where teachers have said about 7 minutes in every half hour there is some kind of disturbance from low level to high level. Now, if we take a guess that most of that is low level, certainly from the schools I've ever been in, then one, not every pupil's affected by that. And it might actually be that it's the teacher that's most affected because they're annoyed that there's some child talking. It doesn't affect 90% of the class. So to extrapolate that 7 minutes to I guess, I've not done the maths on this, but I'll guess this is how it works. 14 minutes an hour multiplied by 32.5 hours a week, you then come to a figure that suggests we've almost lost a day or a day and a half in that week, and then you extrapolate that over 196 days and come up with 45 days, which is all back to somebody. And if you're doing a survey, if I think there's 50% or as a high percentage of people chose 5%, I'm assuming there was a tick box, because it's not something people would come up with randomly, the same figure. So I'm assuming it's something like, what percentage of your per half hour lesson do you think is disrupted from 5% to 100%? So really somebody needs to go into that research. I think it's going to be published, but to extrapolate it to a headline that goes on social media is, for me, just deliberately misinforming what's going on.
Yeah. Go on,
Dennis, go on.
Yeah, Stan, what a story. More or Less has just come back for its most recent series this week, I think.
Yeah.
So drop more or less the line with that social media evidence and see if they'll pick it up, because they're kind of good at understanding those sorts of things. And it's quirky enough and engaging enough and indeed important enough maybe to attract their attention.
Well, that would be a coup, wouldn't it, Stan? Send them.
Yeah.
You could send them this link to this chat as well, and send it on Radio 4. But yeah, no, that's a great suggestion, Dennis. Thank you. Right, what's caught my eye is something we've not actually spoken about before, and it's actually about the Prevent program. And I was sent a screenshot from a colleague, which is actually sort of part of the Ofsted training for its inspectors, and it's very recent, and it's making clear that the guidance of the Prevent guidance has been updated to reflect the sort of current risk and threat picture. And the first bullet point is that it says Islamist terrorism remains the largest concern. Now, I just started to sort of think a little bit more carefully about this, because it made me go to look at the most recent DFE report published, which went up to the end of December 2024. And it's interesting that looking at the referrals, the Prevent referrals over the last 2 years, month by month, in each month except one, extreme right-wing referrals outnumbered Islamist referrals. and in many of the months it was more than double. And it just concerned me that the inspectorate, and in a way a regulator as well, in terms of its independent work, is saying to inspectors that the in effect first bullet point and the most important point is in fact the prevent work around Islamist terrorism. And I'm thinking, but that's not borne out by the data. So why is that happening? And how does that affect an evaluation of a community that has a large number of Islamic pupils?
Mm.
And how does that affect an inspection that's taking place in an area where there are no Islamic pupils? I'm just thinking, it's really, really, this is against, going back to your point, Dennis, this sort of like sense that, oh, well, Ofsted are doing it, it's got to be reliable, isn't it? It's got to be right. I think, a lot of the work we've done since 2020, Stan, has been unpicking the fact that Ofsted is not always right.
Mm.
And, that's the work you're doing, Dennis. And I just worry deeply about the false messaging and the training and professional development that, hours and hours, there's hours and hours of online training being undertaken by inspectors this half term in order that they can be ready for a new framework, which has not been published yet. It's going to be published next week. But actually, well, is this it? Is this the standard, the quality of the insight that's being offered? So yeah, well, let's see what happens. But for me, it was around, some of those hidden messages, the subtle messages that are being pushed out, which I think are very, very unhelpful and at times dangerous, and can lead to schools being criticised for work that they're really, some schools getting away with it and other schools being hit hard simply because the inspectors really don't know what they're talking about because they've been told something which isn't true. So and just annoys me.
Yeah.
Here in Cheadle, you just feel as though, well, gosh, is this? And in a way, part of me is thinking, well, this is it could be a genuine error. I can imagine, people being under a lot of pressure and all this sort of stuff, but this isn't, to me, this isn't good enough. And it is, and in current times, this is just another little brick, isn't it, in a wall that views a certain part of the community as being dangerous and the other lot being sort of like patriotic. So for me, this is just part of playing into that narrative. So yeah, anyway, that's what caught my eye this week. Wow. Well, Stan, who would have thought?
Yeah,
Yeah. So
I think you can get the epitaph angry from Cheadle Hulme before long.
well, yeah. I just feel, and it is. I was so pleased. I will send this link to Mary Spender because, at times you do feel as though, don't you? And you must get this, Dennis, because you've been hammering away on this issue for a number of years. You feel as though, well, no one's listening. Why should I? It'd be easy just now to stop.
Well, I think there are many, many, many instances where those in authority turn a blind eye and a deaf ear. And I think one of the problems that I guess is in my mind, which actually builds on what you just said, Frank, about Ofsted and the inspection regime and all of that, is to whom is Ofsted accountable? Where is the true accountability? And someone in a position of authority does actually, this is right, this is wrong, or whatever. Constitutionally, Ofsted, Ofqual, Ofwhat, all of these places are non-ministerial government departments, and their websites say reporting directly to Parliament. So they're not part of a ministry, Department of Education in Ofsted and Ofqual's instance. So who does call the shots? Or are they just loose cannons rolling around that no one can control?
Yeah, and I think also, Dennis, is I think this was you that helped me see this, was that there is a sort of revolving chair type thing
Oh,
with the CEOs of all of these, or because the current or the former CEO of OFQUAL is now the CEO of UCAS. Oh, that's handy, isn't it? You know,
prior to that,
oh, hang on, we've
Spats,
got a
yeah,
problem with OFQUAL that's
yeah,
affecting UCAS. So let's put the person who managed the OFQUAL thing in UCAS. And then Amanda Spielman was the CEO at OFQUAL, went into Ofsted.
exactly. And of course, Dr. Joe Saxton, UCAS OFQUAL, prior to that was Gavin Williamson SPAD during the mutant algorithm fiasco.
Yes,
So, this network, closed network, self-sustaining, self-sustaining.
yeah. And
Mm.
I have to say, just to finish on a bit more of a positive note, is the appointment of Dame Christine Gilbert as the chair of Ofsted's board. And this could be replicated elsewhere, really. You feel as though uh, it's when you start looking at, well, I'm hopeful that there will be some change. I don't know how radical that change will, but we have to be optimistic. But actually, that also then, Dennis, made me look at who's on Ofqual's board, who's on the UCAS board,
Yeah,
and actually start to think about, well, I was looking at a colleague, and no disrespect to that colleague, but that colleague currently has about 15 roles. They are, I think, on the UCAS board. I think it's the UCAS board. I might have that wrong, but they have 15 senior roles in various organizations. Now, there is no way on earth that I could actually give the attention that's required for something so important as, say, the UCAS board, when I've got so many other fingers in so many other pies, and it's promoted as if this is a wonderful thing.
yes.
To me, is a fundamental weakness, isn't it? When actually you've got so many non-exec roles, and you're actually earning a lot of money from many of those, that actually you haven't got enough time to do the analysis for the role that you have, say, at UCAS or Ofqual.
And what if there's a conflict of interest buried in there as well, which makes it even worse?
Yeah,
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've often wondered what happened in. I go back to 2020 and the COVID crisis. Once against accountability, the Education Select Committee in July 2020 published a report instructing Ofqual to publish details of the algorithm. This was early July, about July the 11th. They refused, which meant that we went through the summer with the ambiguity and the lack of knowledge of what was happening, and it all blew up obviously in August. But how come Ofqual could point blank refuse an instruction from the select committee? And what were the board doing at that time? Why didn't the board say, hey, Ofqual, you've been instructed by Parliament? I don't get it.
yeah, yeah. Well, okay. Well, stimulate. If you've watched this, anyone tell me this was not stimulating? I mean, you might not agree with it, but if this is a new world to you, I suspect you've learned or gained an insight which perhaps you didn't have before. And I think that's all credit down to you, Dennis, on that work, and but also down to you, Stan, for that analysis of the 45 days of missing learning.
Well, I'm only guessing that that's how it's been
Yeah, yeah,
extrapolated,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
I've seen that done before with, you can see that done with the attendance figures, that's a percentage, so many days off means you can't get GCSE. It's just
Yeah.
misuse.
Yeah, yeah. Can I finish with this because we've been running for just about 35 minutes or so. But I remember talking to a shopkeeper in Blackpool, and I've said this story before, and he was talking about how difficult it was for him because he was conflicted because he had three children. The only time he could actually close his shop was when the schools were open because he had to keep his shop open during the summer holidays, the half terms, whatever, Easter.
Mm.
So he was in effect driven to taking a holiday when with his family. They were not going. I'm not saying they went to America or anything like that. This was just a break with his family from the constant day in, day out work involved in keeping a newsagent going. And he was having to plan the fines that he was going to be get, for taking his children out again because he'd done it the year before. And I thought, well, yeah, it's very simple, isn't it, to say, you know, good attendance. You shouldn't be away. Every time I go to the airport, when I can go out now during the school holiday, during the term time, and I look at children there thinking, well, you should be in school, without really understanding, well, why are they there?
Hmm.
So, yeah, anyway, yeah. So, fed up of Cheadle Hume is going to finish this now. Right. Okay, well, thank you very much, Dennis. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Stan, for doing this every week with us. It is a pleasure.
Pleasure.
And guess what? We're back next week. So
Mm.
until then, it's goodbye from us all. Thank you. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.